Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New York, Representative Clark, for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this important hearing and bringing this crucial legislation, the Clean Futures Act, to the forefront of our discussion. Addressing the issues of our recycling system is an important step towards a more sustainable and equitable future. And as such, I'd like to better understand some of the environmental justice concerns with proposals related to the management of plastic pollution, termed chemical or advanced recycling. I'm concerned that chemical recycling is a false solution that does not contribute to the circular economy and increases dangerous emissions at a time when we should be finding ways to bring environmental justice to frontline and fence line communities. So, to Director Arellano, first of all, I love your first name. Thank you for your work on behalf of the fence line communities. Can you elaborate on some of the environmental and health harms that advanced recycling can cause for EJ communities?
Thank you, Representative Clarke. And the impacts we see in incineration communities and pyrolysis plants are similar to those that we see in plastic production. That's why the entire plastic life cycle, it harms communities of color. And so, like I said in my statement, the releases include benzene, styrene, and toluene that will disproportionately affect our communities that are largely uninsured. This means everything from reproductive system harms on the reproductive system, the developmental system, slow to reaction times for children and adults. We've seen numerous studies that link incineration and production with elevated cancer in our communities, specifically the closer you are. And we know that communities closer to incinerations, landfills, and production sites tend to be lower income communities. It's
Yes,
our communities.
we all know too well what happens when communities are exposed to air pollutants and how that can affect their long-term health and prosperity. As a long-term resident of areas near oil and gas facilities, can you talk about the similarities to those facilities that burn plastic in the name of recycling and your experience with more traditional energy facilities? What long-term generational impact can this type of air pollution have on nearby communities?
Taking toxics like benzene, people assume that they'll leave the system as soon as the chemical disaster is over, right? When in reality, if there's a chemical disaster, a fire at an incineration plant or at a plastic production facility, we don't get any alarms. We don't get any news. We aren't told what kind of chemicals are burning or coming out of the flue stacks. Neither are first responders and firefighters who are then exposed to these kinds of conditions. We have seen countless lawsuits from workers, temporary workers, even police departments for not having accurate information from these facilities, shielded by confidential business information and Homeland Security. So we get no transparency. The information we get is too late, and we also get no resources to even go to toxicologists. We had a fire back in 2018, and we were told, go get your blood checked. One single blood test for benzene, toluene, or styrene ranks around $300 to $400. Multiply that by 4. That is the cost our communities is picking up.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Hoffman is the operator of Materials Recovery Facility, or an RMF, a MRF. Do you consider the practices currently used for advanced and chemical recycling to be true to the definition of recycling?
Thank you for that question. The short answer is no. They don't fit in with the definition of recycling because they are linear consumption. Even anything that's been proven to date has been, creating fuel from plastics, which is then burned. This isn't circular. It doesn't keep those resources at play, and it requires that we go back and continue to extract more for any continued production.
Thank you, Ms. Hoffman. Mr. Holloway, Oregon's new recycling law does not exclude the use of chemical recycling, but has environmental safeguards in place. Should that technology be chosen, can you elaborate on those safeguards and why they're important to protect communities?
Thank you, Representative. Yes, Oregon's new policy framework allows producer responsibility organizations to send materials to a chemical recycling pathway as long as three conditions are met. First, the impacts of that pathway have to be fully evaluated and disclosed and compared against alternative pathways, such as mechanical recycling or landfilling. Second, the chemical recycling process needs to be performed responsibly. And finally, this pathway is not allowed if there is an alternative pathway, such as mechanical recycling, that delivers a superior environmental outcome. Where
Thank
chemical
you, Mr.
recycling can
Alloway.
lead
I
to
might, unfortunately, my time is elapsed. Mr. Chairman, I yield back, but thank you for your response. Thank you to all of our panelists today. I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from the state of Georgia, Representative Carter. Welcome for 5 minutes.